that moves on to my next question about employee contracts. So I think they're quite scary when you're taking on your first employee and you think, oh, I've got to get a contract in place and I don't know how to get one or where to start or what to put in it. It can be quite a scary document for a new business.
I think that's true because, you know, you're dealing with a legal contract, but the contract is there not to protect the employee, but to more for the benefit of the employer. So it's a tool that you're setting down what you're expecting. A good contract will have refer to a job description. You know what the main issues within difficulties with employment could be, and you're kind of dealing with that. So that coupled with ACAS guidelines, coupled with any particular policies, forms the basis of your relationship. And you know the same applies when you're dealing with customers. You want to know when you're getting paid and what you have to do to get paid. So it's the same kind of thing. So unfamiliar possibly, but not particularly daunting, because after all, the greater clarity you have on things, then the easier your life is, really. So, you know, you can ask for an accurate job description as an employee. I think that's very important. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I think in terms of getting a contract as an example, then you can look on the ACAS guidelines. You can buy one in Preston Bank, Simply Doctor, something like that. Very useful. Or you can just create your own from scratch. So I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't recommend it, because it can lead to all sorts of difficulties. I mean, of course, you can go to a solicitor and say, look, I'm looking for basic documents. Have you got any free? Lots of solicitors offer free resources for basic documents.
Oh, okay.
So if the staff member is expensive and valuable and key to the business, quite obviously at that time, you really need a contract. For lower grade employment, not so important, because the basic terms could so if you're taking on a head of sales, you'd be looking at a contract which would include things like that if they left, taking the good of your business with them and starting up in competition. So the more important the job, the more important the contract.
Yeah, and you would put those details in your contract about taking your business.
Yeah, restrictive covenants. So that when you're employing top grade people, then they have a knowledge of your business and all of its clients, all of its key staff, where the good of the business lies. And if they were to leave, then they can, without those restrictions, they're basically free to set up with some restrictions, but nevertheless free and to poach your staff as well. So, the more important the person, more important the contract.
So what restrictions could you put on it? Is there a guideline of law what you could put in it to say you can't leave and set up your own business within X amount of years or X amount of months? Is there a...
Yeah, the kind of basic rules of that is that it's against public policy, right? It's against all of our interests to prevent people from working, right? So you have to have promises made by that person and enforced in law, because it's in a contract, which are the basic ones necessary to protect your legitimate business interests. So getting a top sales executive into your business and he decides to leave to take all of your clients and start on his own, you need to prevent that. Can you prevent it for a year? A year is really about the maximum, right? Okay. And it's difficult to enforce, because if a court found it unfair, that it was above the legitimate business interests, right, then they'd disregard it altogether, which would mean that that person would be free. So basically, 6 months, usually fine. Again, depending on the key position, depending on the job, right, will depend on how long it's deemed those clauses to be effective. 3 to 6 months, usually fine. You can set distance. You can say not within 50 miles of where I'm working. You have to set it being the same basis of your client or a similar business. So you couldn't prevent a salesperson working in a completely different industry as a salesperson. And you could merely prevent them working in your industry as a
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So you do it for it to stand up in law needs to be the bare minimum, or as close to the bare minimum, solely so it can be seen as fair and proportionate to protect your business.
Okay, that's good. Good to know, because I think a lot of people forget to put those sorts of things into their contract.
Yeah, I think to reinforce the basic rule: more important the person, more important the contract.
Yeah.
And I think if you keep that in mind, we're not looking at low-grade employees here, because it would be totally unfair to prevent a factory worker from working in a factory.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It would be ridiculous to think that that person, could actually steal all your stuff because they're a factory operative. So it's unlikely.
You shouldn't underestimate the factory operative.
I would never do that.
They might have been sent in as a mole to find out all the key things, and then they're going to sweep it off.
That could be effective industrial sabotage.
Okay.